Okay, welcome. This is Ramon, Bold Like a Leopard, and we're going to do a live stream today talking about a topic that might seem a little odd to most viewers. Um, it's called Gladio in America. And for those of you that don't know what Gladio is, it would probably take 5 years to actually talk about it because people in Italy have been dealing with it for the better part of 3 decades. But in short, it was the code name of a stay behind network in Italy during the Cold War. Stay behind meaning intelligence agents that would remain in a hostile area to coordinate activities in order to fight the enemy on a clandestine basis. And that's basically how the CIA treated Italy during the Cold War. Italy and other countries, by the way, but it's most famous in Italy because it led to a lot of public corruption and election rigging and other manipulations of democracy. Now, that's not to say that we should have let Italy fall to communism during the Cold War, but it's led to probably some of the worst collateral damage institutionally for that country since then. I mean, they've had a corrupt system since then. They've had multiple politicians going to jail, involvement with organized crime and heroin trafficking. And for those of you that don't think that that can happen in the United States, remember those people, the CIA people that managed those networks during the Cold War. What do you think they did after the Cold War ended? Do you think they went back to owning floral shops and dog kennels or something? So I have here today a guest. You may remember him. He's been joining me for the Testigo Venezuela series, but he has a lot of other knowledge and know-how of the world and politics in the United States, especially. This is Carlos Cordova.
All right. Hey, guys.
What's going on, Carlos? So to explain why should anybody care now? We're seeing, in my opinion, and I'll hear Carlos's opinion too. I think me and him have like a couple of different perspectives on it, but we have a Trump administration that was at odds with the intelligence community during the election. A lot of neocon figures from the Bush administration, including Bush advisor David Frum and Karl Rove, they were criticizing him as some sort of wild dog of a person that he would lead America to ruin. And I do believe that the intelligence community has been on the same page as far as what to do in terms of who the next president will be, how to steer him in the right direction. Carlos, what say you? Do you think that there is a consensus in the intelligence community, no matter who's the president, what their agenda is?
Yeah, I mean, we have statements by the Senate Minority Leader. What's his name? He will contribute in a very voice, a certain tone that playing off if he and don't go against the CIA wishes or the intelligence wishes, because he said, quote, something about the lines of like they have one.
Carlos, can you hear me? I don't know if I have a good connection.
So is so yeah.
Can you hear me? I don't know if I have a good connection.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, I was getting a lot of freezing on my end. So what we have happen from the beginning of this administration, which I think is these things happen from time to time, and it's not to say that you can't expect some obstacles, but Michael Flynn was the first Trump cabinet member to lose his spot. Probably a dumb mistake he did in order to earn his, the boot. Then you've had just a succession of issues with H.R. McMaster, the replacement, He was a member of the Council on Foreign Relations. For those of you that don't know, the CFR, Council on Foreign Relations, is a globalist, meeting space where a lot of leaders, including the Clintons, go in order to coordinate their activities and strategies. McMaster has been firing a lot of the Flynn and Trump appointments or appointees under his wing. And I think that we've seen a lot of these movements in the past few months with Syria. I don't think that Trump actually wanted to go and intervene in the Middle East. Now, I could be wrong. He could be a complete idiot, just like President Bush was, and believe all this nonsense about the need for the United States to be involved in Syria, whatever the case is. But do you see, Carlos, that he's had a departure from his non-interventionist stance during the election? I think the question should be obvious, but go ahead.
Well, I mean, it was. I was very warm on that question until he came up with the Afghanistan thing, which basically just people treat that as a speech. I think he's just reading. He's just reading somebody that gave somebody gave him a speech and he read it. Like everybody else, but like it was very apparent. It was kind of like a before. No, I don't think so. He's very quiet about many things, but that doesn't mean that he has and all these things. So yeah, even in like military action, that is an intervention. That one of the good things about views, but by this time,
hey Carlos,
out from what?
Carlos, I'm getting messages that your audio is cutting out.
Oh, really?
Hold on.
Okay.
It is cutting out for me, but I thought it was just me. Yeah, it looks like our stream is not going so well. Wow. Can you try now? I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, no, fine. But yeah, no. The question, I mean, the answer is absolutely not. He's falling in line like every other president.
Yeah, and I think it's a sad commentary, and I see people that they're in favor of this move. Afghanistan I don't think was the worst case, but it's definitely not, because we're already involved there. It's not to say that we should be, like, the worst case in my opinion would be starting a whole new war, which there's plenty of danger that could still happen. It's already, we've seen, and the worst part of it is that it distracts from the domestic agenda that many people were hoping would be the priority for the Trump administration. And we've never had a domestic policy president, a president except for President Clinton, by the way. I think he did focus mostly on domestic policy. But do you think that it would have been feasible for Donald Trump to organize a withdrawal or a drawdown from Afghanistan in the same way as President Nixon did in Vietnam, or to give a bad example, the Obama administration did in Iraq? Would that have also been a possibility, or do you think that we're kind of in a hopeless situation there?
I don't understand the situation right now in Afghanistan enough to actually call it. There's people that say it's a mess and we shouldn't get out, or people that say like it's better if we get out so they can sort it out themselves. And then you have another, so I don't understand it enough. I think I don't know. I mean, with a little bit I know, it's a hard situation right now. It's we're so knee deep into it. It's just being a complete withdrawal. I don't know if that's the best answer, but I don't think a scale up is an answer either. You know, I'm kind of torn. What do you think?
Yeah, I think a lot of Americans are torn, partly because of the 9/11 association, but also because Afghanistan, remember, has been, some people call it the graveyard of empires, and because of the issues when Russia and Britain and then later the Soviet Union tried to dominate it, because it's kind of a country that's so far out there and remote that you could easily just dedicate too many resources to putting down whatever's going on there. There's also the minerals issue. People are talking about using Afghanistan to mine their minerals over there, which I think.
Well, people not Trump himself.
Right, Trump too, and you know, I think it's better. I mean, it might not be better for the Afghanis, but it's better to have somebody who's so transparently, you know,
Yeah, I know.
what would the word be? Transparently uh, greedy as Donald Trump. And you know, I think there's certainly good qualities about him, but yeah, he's not a president that pretends to have higher purpose to all of his activities. Sometimes he just says, you know, we should have taken their oil like he did in Iraq. And it's not like President Bush, who I think was a fraud and a puppet. But you know, here we go. This is a guy who Donald Trump. I think he's becoming a puppet of some of these guys like McMaster. And I was about to say also that I think that personally, and you know, let me hear your opinion on this idea of mine, which I was gonna say he should have done with Syria, is that he should have organized an international convention. Doesn't matter how public it would be. For all I care, it could be completely secret. Get all the parties involved in that conflict, the Turks and the Iranians even, and all those parties, and come together and say, look, if you guys want to see people keep dying, then you're just going to keep people keep people dying, seeing people die. But if you want to solve the conflict, we have to remove all foreign actors from the war, destroy ISIS first, then all of our troops would withdraw, whoever they may be, and we'll just let President Assad, you know, screw around with the rebels, and you know, then it will resolve itself. Now, what do you think is the? Would you say that would have been a proper approach to Syria or Afghanistan, or do you think that's kind of like a pie in the sky idea? You're on mute, by the way.
Okay, so they did get together, but I don't think the Kurds were there. But they did get together, and not all of the parties came to the meeting, United Nations meeting that they had with different factions in Syria. But the thing is that there is that would be nice, but you know, there's interests in there. I mean, there's I mean, it's such a convoluted. I've always thought when I talk about Syria, I think it's just like a spaghetti mess. I call it a spaghetti mess because you have people saying like, well, we should support the insurgents, the rebels, but then there's, you know, it used to be back in the day that we could actually name him, have him by name and say, okay, this group, you know, name A, this group A, and this group B, should trust. But nobody comes up with the names because they're non-existent anymore. It's just it has become such a mess that what has happened, and something that I've seen, is that the opposition group that seems to be more relevant against besides the Kurds is ISIS. You know, ISIS, but you know, not ISIS as a body, but ISIS as a supplier of you know, ISIS as a supplier of radicalism, by bribing people into say, hey, you know, if you go kill these people, I'll give you some food, or you know, I'll give you some money or whatever. You know, it's so hopeless that we've gotten to this point, right? So right now it's hard to go to discuss about it because we have seen from the U.S. these rebel groups that they interact with ISIS, right? To take down Assad. So how do you come down to the table and say, oh, I want to kill both. I want to kill Assad. I want to do two things. I want to and I want to take down Assad, right? Nobody. I mean, who are you gonna negotiate with that type of statement? I don't think you're gonna get anywhere. You gotta take a side and say, okay, like you said, we're gonna leave Assad alone and we're gonna focus on the rebels, if that's what it takes, And which if that happens, that means that the U.S. alongside the Russians, which is another topic, right? So very likely too, because of the whole political mess that the establishment has created after the election. So
yeah, I think that we. Hold on, let me see. I think I'm getting some feedback on your end. Hold on. Let me just let that settle out. Okay. Yeah, I think it's settled out. I think that there's a real issue there where, again, that's where the military-industrial complex comes into play, and that's one of the reasons that, with all due respect to Trump, I do think that he's made some progress in the direct war against ISIS in Syria, but ultimately, if we continue to be involved in these entanglements, I mean, I honestly can't say. I think that, for example, Afghanistan is a much more difficult place to succeed militarily than Syria is. There's no doubt about it, because there's never been a country that's completely subjugated Afghanistan for a long time. It's just very remote and mountainous, and Syria, is also it presents its own challenges, but we have to be realistic here in saying that, as a country that's been in debt, and we're trying to become energy independent, and we're trying to restore our manufacturing base, does this really serve our purposes? I don't think it does. I think it really just serves the purposes of defense contractors and the same types of people that, I've come to think are hurting our policy and our relations with even our allies. I think they're hurting our relations with our allies all around the world. That's how I believe our relationship with the Philippines, with Israel, with even if you talk about Colombia, they've been just complicated by the needs of military-industrial complex. How do you see the role now? This is where, Carlos, you have to step in the driver's seat. What do you think should be the role of these defense contractors in determining policy, or do you think we should cut them out entirely?
No, they have a role for sure. It's just the excess. I mean, you see the people from the military talking about this openly all the time, and talk about, it's not the fact that we need more money. It's just that we are overexpending money already. I mean, they're saying. I remember there was a documentary about the laundry services when they are in Afghanistan or these places, Iraq. They pay people to do the laundry, and they could easily just go ahead and do it. And like when they go to the store to buy paper, it's like fucking crazy. It's like $10 for like a big stack of paper, where you can buy it for like $5. So there's a lot of embedded businesses, like you said, in the industrial complex, that it's gotten too crazy. There's no regulation there. It's just like you're gonna just go ahead and just charge however you want, and just go crazy with it. So it's not like the private industries are just have to be gutted out. It's just there has to be some type of law or something that regulates these things, because it's just getting out of control. I think right now that's as freer as you can get right now, and it's getting really, 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 really expensive. But that doesn't mean that we should cut them out.
Yeah, I think that. Well, I'm just welcoming.
What do you think? What's your take?
I think we really have to start. And this goes not just for the defense industry, but the defense industry has to be really high on the priority of departments where we have to cut a lot of the waste. There's if you watch H.A. Goodman, I don't know if you know his stream, but
Ah,
he didn't.
that guy is
Yeah,
awful.
I think he does a great job, but you know, you can.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people that think he's some sort of like attention seeker, but he did an interview last week with a guy who was a VA whistleblower, and I think it goes all the way. Every single department in our government is filled with just these bureaucrats that they serve the needs of these industries as opposed to serving the needs of the constituents. And you know, I've had arguments with people. I had an argument with today with somebody that you probably know well of, but there's, you know, in terms of the argument that the more we give like funding and infrastructure to these government departments, we're going to see them abuse their position because a lot of these people are very difficult to fire, to keep accountable, to basically track their activities. And that's one of the reasons that I call this, you know, Gladio in America, because when you talk about what happened in Italy, it's really a sad. I mean, it's a sad story, not as sad as maybe, you know. I mean, your country's gone through a catastrophe compared to what they've gone through in Italy, but you see, corruption in Italy is basically accepted as part of their culture, and the Gladio is so. Going into, you know, a little more in depth from my introduction, you had people in all the political parties, the Christian Democrats and the Socialists, and even within the Communist Party, that they were CIA operatives, and they were basically getting cash in order to perform all of these, you know, these dirty tricks for the CIA. In order to keep the Soviet Union from taking over Italy, which had to, you know, in the 50s and 60s, there was a significant threat that some of these Western European democracies would fall under Soviet control, especially Italy. Italy and France were the worst targets in terms of vulnerability. And instead of curtailing those activities as the Cold War got more entrenched and stable, the CIA continued all of their dirty games. And you know, there was this period in Italy, they call it anni di plomo, the years of lead, when you had these guerrilla groups, the Brigate Rossi, I think they're called, the Red Brigades, and these neo-fascist groups like the Ordine Nuovo, that they would just go around and just shoot people and rob banks and you know, blow train stations up, and they'd each blame the train station, similar to what's going on today. Unfortunately, they would blame these horrible acts of violence on the other side, and you would never know which side was really responsible for it, or whether it was these CIA operatives or whatever. Which I'm not trying to say that the things that are going on today are setups or anything, but in terms of the political system, in this H.R. McMaster, all these people at the very top, there's more generals in Trump's cabinet than there have been in most cabinets in my lifetime. It certainly does worry me, even as somebody who I'm more sympathetic to the president than many of my guests. Do you see the president as being able to act independently of the military-industrial complex, or is he kind of like a captive?
Well, we haven't seen it. I think the last one was Kennedy, wasn't it? He go against it and he got killed. I've seen it. I mean, so far, that's one of the hopes I had with Trump, is that he had some type of independence from it, because he wasn't in the system for a long time, like Hillary Clinton and other candidates, right? So I was expecting some type of independence on that side, but like you're saying, he's falling back in line like everybody else. But I mean, he could, but I don't know. I haven't seen it yet.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a rough fight for him because, you know, we were discussing earlier, you know, this weird issue with Stephen Bannon, which Stephen Bannon is kind of a mystery, I think, for everybody. He's portrayed as a Nazi, not much evidence there if you really delve into it. And I'm somebody that would care about that if it were true. I think it's a complete hoax. But yeah, you were mentioning that he wanted to arm some militia groups, which I think that would present a different problem.
Yeah.
It's not the military industrial complex. What that would involve, I think, would it's easy to say that. It's easy to say yes, we're going to have a civilian militia,
No, no,
but
it's not civilian militia. It's private contractors that act like as how do you call it? As mercenaries.
mercenaries.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah. This is
okay.
what he's talking
So
about. But the thing is that all the problems that you're mentioning about the current industrial complex on like issues of accountability, issues of access, they get multiplied with this type of contracts. I mean, you don't. Who's gonna keep him accountable? I mean, we've seen this before. Is when you have private mercenaries roaming around, they will make the case that you need their services for longer periods of time than it actually used to. Not only that, but you also have these abuses of force and power that they're not checked because they're just private mercenaries. So it's not like the military is doing the damage here. It's just private contractors. So it's harder to pinpoint who to blame. Are you gonna blame the contractors or are you gonna blame the government because they pay the contractors? It becomes a little fuzzy there.
yeah, I think if I was to think about what to do in Afghanistan to avoid this, it would have to be some sort of just a blitz campaign that would intimidate the Taliban to the point where they would want to reach a political settlement. Now, I've heard some commentators say that that's already been on the table before, and past U.S. presidents, including Obama and Bush, they've just left deals on the table for whatever reason. I mean, I'm not sure. I mean, it could still be a bad deal, but I think that the scenario that you're outlining would be, it just wouldn't be in line with my philosophy, because I don't believe in paying private corporations money from taxpayers to perform things that we don't need, and I don't think it's consistent with your perspective. Given what
Well,
I know about,
that's certainly,
yeah,
but that's certainly what Bannon was for.
yeah,
I mean, he was pushing
yeah.
for this.
I think that's one of the unknown things with him. But I think that it's with or without Bannon. I think that that's something that the McMaster and the CFR group, these people that are the neocons, they're the true neocons, the John McCains. They don't need Steve Bannon to push for it, because they've been supporting that type of policy for years and years and years, and the Democrats have never really they've never really they pay lip service to the idea that they're anti-war, but they're not really anti-war, and they don't really have good reasons for why they go along with these military policies. And it's I think I'm going to shift to that, but okay, so let me ask you this brief question before I go to that segue. What do you think is the role of the Democrats given this current climate in critiquing this Afghanistan policy? Do you think that they will be a robust critic or not?
No, come on. They're not anti-war. I don't remember the last time the Democratic Party was anti-war. They're all for war. I mean, both parties are for war. I think who was the only bit against military action recently? I think it was Ron Paul, and I think it was Bernie Sanders. They were the only ones in Senate who voted against some type of military intervention somewhere. But like, yeah, no, the Democratic Party is not a.
Can you hear me?
Different. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I just had a brief interruption. Yeah, I think that's really the state of both parties. That you have a couple people on the fringes, as so to speak, that they that they kind of play this role of not being of they'll voice their opposition so that there is a voice of opposition, but they don't have any chance of changing anything. So it's almost
So
as if
so here it is.
what?
So here it is. The Bernie Sanders and Rand Paul, only two senators to vote against the Russia sanctions.
Yeah. That's also true. They seem to be, but like I said, those guys, and I'm not saying they should go along with the administration, but it's not enough to have two senators out of 100 presenting it. Just like in the House, there's this Tulsi Gabbard, and this and Tom Massey.
Yeah.
They're the people that are. I mean, really, we should have. Real there, and there. I'm not going to say I'm not a pacifist. I'm not against war. I'm not against selling arms. I'm not against any of those things. But I do think that there has to be moderation and proper public debate on all those policies, especially when we're sometimes we're handing out arms for free to these countries, and these arms are arriving at shores that we never dreamt that they would. That I don't think that that's the idea behind having a defense complex that's so huge. And it's not even defense anymore. It's really kind of an we have a Department of Military Spending, and that's what I look at it as. It's unfortunate, and this is coming from somebody who's not a pro an anti-war person. I just think that Americans have to be smarter about how they support their military, just the same way that I think it's there's this debate between Black Lives Matter and police. I say you can criticize both the Black Lives Matter movement and criticize the police without being without being a dick. And I think it's the same idea. You kind of have to. This isn't an issue of taking sides. It's an issue of finding a good consistent policy across the board. And I think unfortunately here it's really the industrial interests are what are guiding it. So leaving that aside, that's the foreign aspect of this Gladio. And I'm going to be talking about Gladio maybe a little more in the coming weeks once I get settled into my new house. But there's Gladio was, remember, influencing a political system in a foreign country, and some say that it never ended. Not even some say that network is still in place in Italy and in Western Europe to this day. Now let's shift gears to the DNC lawsuit, which we talked a little bit about on Friday, right? So this judge, this idiot, he dismisses a lawsuit that he actually admitted apparently that there is grounds for fraud.
Yeah.
You're seeing
have you read the actual lawsuit, the response of the judge?
I didn't read it, but I did hear the interview with the lawyers for the plaintiffs.
Okay. So go on. What were you saying?
So anyway, I'm just saying that we have, and this is something I never donated to this candidate or anything, but the basic issue here is that we have a system where a political party promised a fair process and delivered something that was basically as crooked and underhanded as it could be in any possible way. They did leaking information. They did basically spying on a candidate, smearing him in the press, controlling the number of debates, manipulating votes, every possible way. And these donors, they decided, we didn't pay for this. We want our money back. And the judge basically ruled, well, despite the appearance of fraud on a technical matter, that it is a private organization and they can make whatever rules they want. And I believe, this parallels the topic that I'm talking about, Gladio, where you're having these political parties are nothing but an extension of a system makes the public voice irrelevant. The voter is
Right.
basically, they don't play a role. Do you think that there is a parallel with what I'm talking about in Europe and today, or am I exaggerating?
I mean, you're talking about, I think, two different things. I mean, you're talking about foreign uh, political process intervention, and this is more of an internal thing here of with the DNC. Obviously, there's different factors here, but I think they're two different things. But anyways, in any case, let me read to you real quick something interesting about the response of the judge, which, you know, is funny because I haven't seen the interview with the plaintiff. I actually just, you know, read the document, and if you see it, it's funny because in the document, even though the claim was dismissed, not the claim, the suit was dismissed, you see that the judge himself actually agrees with the attorneys. I mean, so check this out. So you say, like, literally, this is in the first two pages. You say, so here we go. So in the 2016 presidential election, Democratic primaries, Bernie Sanders and others vied against Hillary Clinton for the party's nomination. This case, in short, involves allegations that the Democrat National Committee was in cahoots with the Clinton campaign and sought to tip the scales in her favor in the Democratic primaries, all the duration of and under the leadership of a watchful eye of its then chair, Deborah Wasserman Schultz, despite the DNC and Wasserman Schultz's promise to remain impartial. Plaintiffs discovered that what they believe is evidence of that bias against the DNC computer servers were penetrated by hackers. Shortly thereafter, they brought this punitive class action lawsuit, the DNC and its former chair. Okay, so here we go. Plaintiffs claim at this stage, the court assumes their allegations are true. Okay, that the DNC and Wasserman Schultz held a palpable bias in favor of Clinton and sought to propel her against her Democratic opponents. You know, so this lawsuit was actually thrown. I mean, if you read the whole thing, this lawsuit was actually thrown off by technicalities of the suit, but not by the allegation itself. So I don't know. It's interesting.
Well, okay. So this is where, you know, you said there's no foreign involvement. Now I think there is foreign involvement, but that's not even the point, because with Gladio, the whole issue is that the intelligence community is influencing other elements of the government and the state in order to bring about the outcomes that they need. And okay, so listen to why I'm saying this. We can look back for the past 5 years, however long you want to go, but let's just talk about last year with James Comey and his ridiculous press conference, where he outlined similarly. He said the same thing about the Clintons and the stupid, quote unquote mistakes without intent, and the classified information, and where he framed the case as if he was about to throw the hammer down, and then he didn't. He said, "There's no intent. We can't do anything."
Yeah.
That, in my opinion, is the same. It's the same sort of just posturing in order to help the people that they know have to stay in power to stay in power. And if you want to talk about foreign involvement, remember there's all of these donors that have been donating to the Clintons, and it just doesn't go from just 2016. I can show you this book. I don't have it here today, but Ron Brown's Body, if you want to look it up. Ron Brown's Body by Jack Cashel. I'll put it in the chat for anybody who wants to look for it. And it documents how the DNC has been playing along this tactic for years. They'll take money from some of these banking billionaires from China and Indonesia and other countries, and use it to get elected, get their people elected, and then they'll return the favor. You know, they'll approve certain deals and FCC deals and whatever has to be done in order to facilitate the interests of those corporate donors, and in some cases, state donors. In the case of the Clintons during the 90s, it was the Chinese government. At a certain point, they almost approved a real estate deal that would have given the Chinese basically a massive base to conduct surveillance in Southern California. And you can find that in that book. It's not well known because the media doesn't really care about Chinese influence in in the United States. They didn't care about Russian influence in the past either. Only now do they care about Russian influence in the elections. And then you can talk about, I mean, I'm sure you know about it, Carlos, but the Awan brothers influencing
Oh yeah.
the congressmen in Washington, especially Congresswoman Schultz. So given all of this, do you think that we're headed for some sort of real political crisis in 2018 if the Democrats lose in that midterm election? As I was discussing with the gentleman off air, Alex, we were discussing what would happen. He's kind of a more pessimistic nature because he's one of these Republicans that apparently has consistent heartburn. But I'm of the opinion that the Democrats have really basically swallowed a massive habanero pepper that they don't know how to sort through. But what do you think would happen if they failed to take back either house in 2018?
Oh, I can only hope. I can only hope they wake up. But they will. I don't think they will. I don't think they will. They honestly think. I think if they do lose again, I think something's got to give. I think they have to, because I think what's happening right now is that their approach of things is like, let's just let this administration fall down. We'll come back in 2018 and say, we're the better guys. It's kind of like what Hillary Clinton did in a way. It's like, come on, you're gonna vote for that guy? Come on, vote for me, right? It's kind of like that. So they're playing this game of like, well, there's no other option to lose if they don't change from here until then. I think they're gonna lose badly. But if they do, I think they will change because they have to survive. Otherwise, I mean, they're gonna be completely destroyed. I mean, I completely, it's just a defeated party throughout the country.
So,
they already
okay,
are.
So you consider yourself on the progressive side of the spectrum, right?
Yeah.
So what would you say is the first step towards, and you can start wherever you want and with whoever you want, towards reforming a party that's fallen into the state that they have?
I think they have to use, I think, a policy that they can safely go by, that they can start rebuilding the party is the problem with student debt. I think if they come up with a plan that Bernie and Hillary agreed to, which is free college for people that make under like 120,000. I think that was the plan. But they have to come. I think the first thing they need to do, I think the safest thing for them politically, is to come with a clear-cut plan on how to solve the problem with student debt. It's. I think for me, in my opinion, that's the biggest. I don't think I think healthcare is also huge, but more than anything, if we're talking about of a generation of student debt and the loan industry and how that why is it the way it is right now, why people are being shackled, why people cannot pay it all the way.
Are you still with me, Carlos?
Are getting debt. You hear me?
Yeah, I can. Hold on. It keeps doing this for some reason.
Yeah.
I can see.
But anyways,
now.
that's.
So yeah, I got most of your remarks about
Okay, so
student debt, but you know, I think that we could probably have more of a back and forth on that. But I think like the real issue today is just establishing what would be the priorities towards reforming them.
yeah.
Do you think that the powers that be in the Democratic Party have an interest in suppressing that topic, suppressing that change, or are they just lazy, or are they? What do you think is the reason that they don't present that as one of their priorities?
Uh, that's a good question. There have to be some type of and supporting this. I mean, I don't know which interest. I haven't looked into it, but I'm just speculating. There is some type of interest behind it. But yeah, coming back to the reforming of the party. I mean, obviously, I'm talking about policy. That's one of the first thing. But obviously, you know, if you're talking just as a party, I think the plan laid out right now, but the some of the things that have been talked in the Unity Commission on the DNC, things like, you know, abolishing or reducing superdelegates, opening up the primaries, administration, giving independent authority of giving power to independent auditors for redistricting, and you know, these type of, you know, dirty games that both parties play in redistricting their you know, playing with the districts. But I think if there's an openness for people to come in and actually vote, then they're gonna get a little better. But I don't think it's gonna be enough. But I think it's a start. You know, if you start reforming the election process. I mean, the election process last year was a disaster. I mean, come on. What happened in New York was a disaster. What happened in Arizona was a disaster. You know,
Yeah, I'll tell you what. There's you know, as regardless of what happened, you know, Trump winning was what was the big benefit there for me was watching Hillary Clinton lose. And
Me too.
you know, and honestly, I didn't like Bernie Sanders either, but there were a lot of GOP candidates I thought were awful too, including Jeb Bush. So my opinion has been that we have to have in some states we might even have to have more parties that are just going and breaking with the two-party monopoly. I mean, there's in my state, I was discussing with the other guy, Alex, who, you know, he had to leave before we got on air, but that in Ohio, the Democratic Party it's basically like the aftermath of an atomic bomb drop. They have nothing left. They're all, a lot of their leaders have been you know, incarcerated. The ones that have not been incarcerated are you know, they're old, or they don't have any new ideas, or they're, you know, they've been chosen by union delegates, and what would have to happen in order to be there, for there to be real democracy in some of these states, was to have there to be a viable third party. And you know, I've looked at some candidates in other states, because we don't have in Ohio. There is no.
Well, I'll tell you this: for that to happen, there's something else that has to happen. Because we talk about this, you know, third parties is always a topic on election time, but I think we need to look at the mechanism to get there. Because people say, oh, well, you know, you just have somebody else running. It's just not gonna work like that. But for example, I'll give you an example. One of the things you need to look at if you're talking about third parties, one of the things you need to look at is one of the reforms that got passed by voters on, I think it was North States of Vermont, Maine. Maine passed. I don't know if you know, they passed by voters that the ranked choice
voting. Okay, yeah.
Yes, this is, if you want to talk about third parties, you have to talk about ranked voting, ranked choice voting. It's without that you cannot have that. I mean, realistically, I'm talking about just like you know, let's talk about realistic. If you want to get there, you have to have the mechanism to get there. And I think one of those things is the ranked choice voting, because it allows people to not be beholden to a party or beholden to a candidate because you don't like the other candidate, or like you have this blackmailing happening in every election where you say like, oh, come on, if you don't vote for me, you're racist because you're voting for Trump. You avoid all that because you say, I have my ranks, I have my choices, and I'll bet you, like, if that happens, in third parties are gonna come in, because like, if you don't like the first between the red and the blue, I'm sure you're gonna like the yellow, or I'm sure you're gonna like the green. Use as a second option. That's my take. That's one of the mechanisms to get there.
Yeah, I think I think we should take a look at. You said in Maine it's taken effect. I think we have to start at least paying attention to it, and then probably implementing it in other states. In New York State, there's a governor's race next year. Larry Sharp, who's a guy that I see on Facebook. He's running for governor of New York on the Libertarian ticket, and the Libertarian Party has become a joke for a while because of Gary Johnson. And the Libertarian Party, for those of you that don't know, and this might not interest anybody else on this podcast or whatever, but they've become just all this free speech debate that has been going on. They don't even care. They don't address it. They all they want to talk about is getting Libertarian Party candidates elected, and it's been a disappointment for me. But in some respects, I think that the state of New York would probably do better with a Libertarian candidate than with either a Republican or Democratic candidate, because there's so much waste in the government of New York. It's a massive infrastructure. People are fleeing the state in terms, taking their careers elsewhere, taking their, they retire elsewhere, taking their money out of the state. I think they would need a change up there. On the other hand, you can go to somewhere out in the Great Plains like Nebraska or Idaho, and I see that link that you put up there. I'll put it in the chat if I can. But let me see. Yeah, I might have to copy that somewhere else. But the problem that I'm seeing is that there's certain states where there is a monopoly, a monopoly of one party. In Idaho, Wyoming, those would be Republican states. You could go to New York State, California. You could see on the Democratic side, and what I see here as the parallel to Gladio, which is a topic I brought up. For some people, it might sound ridiculous that I'm saying that the United States election system is being manipulated by intelligence services, but I think we really are seeing that these two parties, they don't really mean anything in terms of policy differences. When you really get, one of them they'll talk about how the other side is a bunch of Klansmen and torch-bearing toothless rednecks, and then the other side will say that the Democrats are communists and baby killers. And I think we all share a little guilt on that, but when you don't have variety in the political system and they're all controlled by these intelligence masters, I see somebody in the chat is using my favorite emoji, the think emoji, but we're really sliding into an abyss, and that's what happened in Italy, and they're only starting to emerge from it now, and that's something that I'd have to cover a different day. But do you think, Carlos, and I think we'll close after this, do you think that either of these parties is reformable, or do you think maybe we do need to start completely breaking them up and going into a reform system that's starting from scratch?
Like a parliamentary system or something like that?
Say that again? Well, I didn't hear what you said.
It's fine. It's fine. No, I think they are reformable. It's just you need to get the people activated. You need to get more people involved and actually get keep the pressure on. I mean, we saw what happened in California when people try to do that. It was nasty. I mean, you saw that in the Democratic committee meetings in Sacramento. Standing up, universal health care, or vote for SB. I think if people keep the pressure, I think it's going to take time. I think it's not going to take a year or 2 or 3 years. It's going to be a constant pressure on the parties to this. But like I said, like the third party thing, if there's not a structural change on the way the mechanism work on how to elect people, I don't think it's going to happen. But this is, if people keep doing things like Maine is trying to do, or like if people, like if there is policies that get into effect where you actually open up the electoral process to more people, like automatic registration is a no-brainer for me, at least. Open primaries where, like you said, like anybody can run and you can vote for anybody. Although there's some problems in there, I'm not saying. And then rank choice voting, those type of structural things need to get in place. And to get those in place, you have to go to the parties and actually reform it, because they are the ones running the primaries. So yeah, I think they're reformable. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that both parties they present their own challenges, and can you hear me? Because I don't know if maybe my signal is breaking up.
I can hear you.
Yeah, I'm just making sure, because I do get some interference on yours. But the problem that I see with the Democratic Party is slightly different from the Republicans, but they both share a lot of the same corruption. Which is, first of all, and I think you mentioned this a different time, the Citizens United ruling. We have to make an amendment and change the entire funding mechanism completely. It just can't work this way, where these parties are becoming franchises of corporations, whatever they would be. And I understand that industries need to look after their own interests, but it's not. That's not the way I think that a political party should operate. And if it's the way they think it should be, then we have to abandon them. But I think with the Republicans, they've proven that at a certain point the failure got so bad that people picked, probably the most, this dragon man, this Donald Trump guy. And they've certainly sent a message that the party is, I've been arguing with people, about this John Kasich and some of these other people that I call them gargoyles, because they'll pretend that they're not going to move on you during the day. They'll act like they're made of stone, and then at night they come to life and they screw you. That's really the way I see the Republican Party. But it's not in any way as bad as the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party, I think, is so fundamentally corrupt now that this lawsuit has been dismissed, which I think there was foul play involved, that you really have to consider. Maybe, I mean, I don't know who I'm talking about, whether it's progressives or just liberals, but they do deserve somebody to speak for them, and they're not getting it with these people, with Nancy Pelosi or with
fucking Pelosi, dude.
Right, and it's it's almost sad, because there's people that they have, viable, for example, conservation, environmental conservation. There needs to be a party to stand up for that. It's not the Republican Party. I believe in environmental conservation. Now, am I going to get that as a person who's conservative from a Republican candidate? I don't think so. There's very few people in that party that represent that, and people, they need to be able to go and look at both. They have to look at each candidate and see where their standards meet this candidate, or vice versa, where that candidate meets their standards. And when you have this lesser of two evils, as people have been saying in the chat, no, I don't think that they can be reformed. I think the Republicans are in some ways worse because they've been lulled into this notion that Trump did this work for us, and or that they even say sometimes we could have won this election without Donald Trump. Well, then that doesn't excuse you doing absolutely nothing and being just an embarrassment and keeping the Affordable Care Act in place. I think that they are a party that's headed towards a different type of change in 2018. A lot of their guys might get primaried out. The
Yeah.
question is if the primaries will lead to more Republicans getting elected, or to some of those seats flipping. That remains to be seen. With the Democratic Party, I think that the situation is much worse. They're not willing to do that painful introspection, which ironically, you're having minimum government free capitalist and a progressive Bernie Sanders supporter. We're discussing this in far greater depth than some of those people at the top. And that really says something about what state the political system is in now. Any final thoughts, Carlos, besides on anything Afghanistan?
There's a book. Sure, I wanna plug in the book. There's a book I'm reading right now. It's called "No Good Men Among the Living." That's about Afghanistan, and it talks about. It's basically the writer goes and describes the life of three people. One Taliban leader, insurgent or a rebel, in a way, pro-U.S., kind of like U.S. Supported rebel, and the life of a civilian. And they go through the whole process before and after the invasion of Afghanistan. And I'm already in chapter 3, and it's pretty good. So I recommend it to people too. If you want to learn about Afghanistan, No Good Men Among the Living is great.
Right, and I want to let people know, I'm reading this book now, the one that Carlos recommended last time. I'm about to start it. But I just finished a different book yesterday. So hopefully we'll have another session of our other series, the Testigo Venezuela. We'll have to talk to some of the other guys. By the way, look for some more people if you can that are interested. But I think that with that, we're gonna conclude for the day. Gladio in America. What does that mean? It kind of means you have to watch whether your vote and your voice means anything, because in the end, they continue to work whether you're voting or not, and whether you're participating or not. And you have to remain vigilant to what they're doing with your vote and what you're doing what they're doing with your money. And we've talked about a lot of those themes today, whether it's in Afghanistan or it's in domestic policy with these student loans, and how to deal with conservation. All of those issues people kind of forget on the non-election years, and I think that's one of the reasons we've arrived at the state we're at today. So everybody have a great night. Stay bold, and we might see you later this week.